Morning, everybody. This is Scott, the Cowboy Counselor. It's a cold morning here in Colorado, 5 or 6 degrees below zero. I'm looking out the window and it looks like a winter wonderland out there. So I'm in the kitchen this morning. I had thought that I wanted to do a video on whole foods cooking. My wife and I have become fairly serious about nutrition and eating right. But one thing that occurred to me is that one of the barriers to a lot of people cooking with whole foods is not having a sharp knife. And this is also video number 2 of the Ulu knife build that I did. Here it is finished. So it's actually in an antler base. So I'll show what it looks like sitting here on the counter here in a little bit. I'm going to be using the Ulu knife to cut up an onion. And then this is also the knife that we made last weekend. It's just a very basic antler handled thin bladed knife. So another good cooking knife, another good butcher knife. So a lot of times when I go to somebody's house and I'm going to help cook, if we go to visit relatives, I'll pick up a knife and want to cut something up and it's so dull. It's like the edge of a credit card. So I don't know how you would ever slice an onion with that, how you would ever chop up any food, cut meat. It would just be such a chore. And so one of the basic skills that you need to have to go into cooking is to have a sharp knife. And I know that there's a lot of knives out there. You see them advertised in infomercials that they stay sharp forever. I promise you that's not true. If it's a knife, it will go dull. I don't care what it's made out of. It's a super knife. If it cut through a tin can on television, has a serrated edge, it will dull up on you. So let's take a little bit of time. I'm going to show you some just really simple ways to sharpen a knife the easiest way possible. There is a lot of automatic knife sharpeners out there. I don't like them much because they take a lot of steel off the blade. They don't necessarily put the angle on the edge that I want. But I'm also a knife maker and I'm a professional blacksmith and lifelong hunter too. So I have developed some of those skills. But whatever you need to do to get an edge on a knife, do that. But let's start today with just some really simple techniques. So the first thing I'm going to show, this is actually a two-sided sharpening stone. I want to say this is just an Ace Hardware brand. It's a composite. It's not even a real stone. So in other words, it's made out of compressed materials of some kind. It has a rough edge and it has a finer edge. So I'm guessing the rough edge is somewhere around, I'm just going to guess and say 150 grit. And I'm going to say this is probably 220. So what you would do is you would take a dull knife and you would sharpen first on the more abrasive edge to get all the nicks, to get the dullness out of it, and then go over to your finer edge. Now I have other sharpening stones in here. This is one. This is a Japanese water stone. I make my own straight razors. I forge my own to shave with. And this is a water stone that is made to be used while it's wet or under running water. And this, I believe, is a 800 grit side. So this side is extremely smooth and it's going to be more for my straight razors. I'm not going to use that on a kitchen knife. I don't need an edge like that on a kitchen knife. I typically sharpen every time I cook. I'll at least swipe the blade on a stone just to clean the edge, and it's just part of my repertoire. And I'm going to show what that looks like. So let's go ahead and go to the stone. I did want to point out that Bentley was just really excited about this video this morning. I had a hard time even getting him to settle down so that I could film. Okay, this is our stone laid out on a flat surface. If you're going to hold the stone in your hand, make sure that your fingers are below the level of the stone when you go to start sharpening, because you will cut off the tip of your finger. I actually did that recently. So I'm going to lay this on a flat surface. And what we want to do, this is a fairly thin blade. And so I'm going to lay it flat on the stone. It's laying flat now. And I'm going to lift it until I can see the cutting edge make contact with the stone. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that I'm cutting off a thin slice of cheese. I'm just going to push all the way through and I'm going to finish through the point. And now I'm going to come back to the other side and do the same thing. So there we go. I'm going to lift it up until I can see my cutting edge make contact with the stone. And I'm just going to keep on repeating that process. Slicing off that thin slice. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to go to the finer side. Same thing. I can tell just by feel when that is lifted up to the point that it's making contact. But I'm going to look at it. Let's see. Let's go this way. See that gap? That line, dark line right there? Let's see it disappear. Now it's making contact. And I'm going to keep on slicing away. Now, if your knife is extremely dull, you might have to really work this rough edge, put some pressure down on it, bear down a little bit. This one already had a decent edge on it because I just got done making it. I really haven't used it for much yet. Okay. Now, I can tell a lot about the sharpness of a knife just by how it grabs my finger. So this one actually has a couple of dull spots on it yet I can see. So I'm going to work on that a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at my edge, and anywhere I can see light reflected on here, I know I've got a nick in the blade or it wasn't quite sharpened enough yet. So I've got one tiny little dull spot where I can see light reflecting and one right here. So I'm going to bring up the level of that. And that pretty much took care of it. That's looking pretty good. So I'm going to grab the ulu now. And I'm going to do the same thing. Even though it's a different configuration of blade, the same rules still apply. So I'm going to lay it on there. I'm going to lift it until it makes contact. And do a couple of swipes with that. Okay. I'm also going to demonstrate. I'm going to hold the stone. I'm going to keep my fingers below the level of the stone and swipe this way. This is normally how I sharpen, especially if I'm up on the woods and we're butchering on the hillside or we're cutting up meat. I'm just going to grab the stone and sharpen like this. Now, another thing that's important for your stones is to keep them washed off. So as you collect steel in these stones, run it under hot water, take a sponge, and scrub it off real quick. A lot of stones are going to work better when they're wet because it's going to bring out the grain of the stone. Not necessary on a lot of them, but this one has a little bit of moisture in it this morning from when I washed it off. Take a couple more passes on that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to test the sharpness on this one. It's not necessary to do this, but sometimes it's kind of a fun thing to do. And ironically, this is an energy bill. And so I'm going to literally cut our energy in half, or at least I hope so. Okay, maybe not half, but you can kind of get an idea of that's not tearing, that's actually slicing through the paper. This is the finished ulu in its antler stand. You can kind of see it has the little pieces of antler back there to support it. I really like the looks of this thing. I don't know if I have room to display it on the counter here in my kitchen. I'm going to demonstrate now how I would slice and chop an onion. I'm actually going to make an omelet for breakfast this morning. So once again, if you haven't done a lot of Whole Foods cooking, keep your fingers out of the way. It does not take a lot of pressure to slice a finger or cut it all the way off. I think it takes about as much pressure to cut through a finger as it does to chop through a carrot. So what we're going to do, fingers out of the way, it's not underneath the blade. Cut off the ends. Okay, I like to make one cut around the side of the onion and then just peel off that outer layer. Kind of using my thumbnail to get rid of that stuff. It's a good red onion. Love the smell of that. Okay, I'm going to use my slightly longer blade to go ahead and cut off as much as I need for my omelet. Let's go to this side. Now let's do that side. Once again, fingers are not under my blade. They're on top of the onion. Shouldn't take much more effort than that if you have a good sharp knife to cut through that. So now let's go to the ulu and see how it does. I have not used this yet, so this will be interesting. Oh, I like it. Nice. My center of gravity is right on top of the blade. What a great chopping blade. I'm going to come back the opposite direction. Clean off my blade a little bit. Okay, that's pretty much it for this lesson on knife sharpening and chopping an onion. If I do a cooking video, I think I'll do that as a separate one. And one of the things I want to demonstrate is just some really simple ways to cook with whole food. And the good news and the bad news is, that if you're not already cooking with whole foods, you need to learn. Whether you feel like you're any good at it or not, it is not that complicated. Due to the price of food, we know some of the things that go into processed food are not good for us. The closer you can get to food in its purest form, whole meats, whole vegetables, the healthier you're going to be. And it's not that difficult, and it's a lot of fun. It's also very mindful and very good for mental health to pour yourself into your cooking. And I'll explain more about that later on. So I want to recap some of our lessons today. Once again, the two knives that I made in other videos for the week. This is one good thin bladed cooking knife. May hang on to it or may not. Whoops. I think the ulu I'm definitely going to hang on to. I love the way that that works. And good, simple, I'm guessing this was a $10 sharpening stone. You do not need a high dollar stone. You can see how this one is beveled out a little bit. That's how hard that's been used. So we cook a lot, we sharpen a lot, and that does not affect the stone at all. That is still fine. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit like and subscribe. If you would like to see more videos having to do with sharpening, cooking in general, meat processing, let me know. All right, over and out. Have a great morning.